Deborah Richardson, Executive Vice President and Senior Advisor for Partner Engagement at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, is our commencement speaker today. She has spent her career devoting herself to the leadership and advocacy for women and girls, particularly in the protection of their human rights. Ms. Richardson received her master's degree in leadership from St. Mary's in 2013 and launched the International Human Trafficking Institute the following year, intending to engage college students to help fight against sex and labor trafficking. While Richardson has devoted her career to positively affecting people's lives, the experience of witnessing the abuse of a girl victimized by sex trafficking deeply affected her life and path forward. Richardson helped lead a campaign to change legislation and raised $1 million to open Angela's House, the first safe house for sexually exploited girls in the Southeast. She also worked to force Craigslist.com to close down its adult services sites, which fostered the abuse of adolescent girls. Clearly, Deborah Richardson has changed lives. With more than 30 years as a successful senior executive with nonprofit organizations, she knows how to get things done. Before serving in the National Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, Ms. Richardson served as the Chief Program Officer for the Women's Funding Network in San Francisco, as Chief Executive Officer for the Atlanta Women's Foundation, and as Founding Executive Director for the Fulton County Juvenile Justice Fund. We're honored to have this inspiring speaker and leader here with us today. Please join me in welcoming Deborah Richardson.
Dr. Donahue, members of the Board of Trustees, this amazing faculty behind me, the graduates, your families up there in the stands. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, namaste. I want to begin by sharing a true story. Several years ago, my now ex-husband and I were hosting our blended families in our home for the first time. My then 5-year-old niece was introduced to his daughter, who was 12. My niece asked her, "Is Aunt Deborah your mother?" His daughter said to her, "No, Aunt Deborah is my stepmother." And my niece said, "Are you Cinderella?" I tell you this funny and true story to illustrate the theme of my remarks to you this morning. What we believe is what we know, without realizing that what we know is not always to be believed. I'm going to repeat that. What we believe is what we know, without realizing what we know is not always what is to believe. As a simple illustration, during the 14th century, people believed that the world was flat. We now know that this is not true. In the 1930s, the political powers in Germany used propaganda to create the belief in their citizens that Jews were a group of people who were a threat to their greatness and had to be eliminated. After 6 million people and 80 years later, we know that belief was not true. For over 300 years, the political, religious, and social powers in the United States sustained the belief that blacks were subhuman and had neither the intellect nor right to be treated equally to whites. I stand before you as evidence that that belief was never nor is correct. We're living in a time that is fostering a belief that young people who were brought to this country as young children and grew up embedded with the quest to seek the American dream now need to be targeted for policies that would lead to their deportation. In contrast, we know these young people. They're our friends, they're our peers, and we experience them very differently, very much like us. And we understand their quest to want the same quality of life that others enjoy. It is also now believed that all Muslims are complicit in and have the actions of a proportionate few, but we know that is incorrect. In these past and current situations, most people were and continue to be bystanders, not willing to feel something, say something, or do something. It was then and now up to us upstanders, the few who believe that the goodness and potential in each of us propels us to do something, to say something. I grew up in Atlanta in the 1950s And I know firsthand, watching my parents and other adults go through the American Civil Rights movement, and was amazed living in a segregated community where most of my interactions were people who had my similar skin color and looked like me, that there began showing up in our churches and our organizations white students from the North and other places who came to join our struggle as allies. They were not there by force, but they were by choice. And they stood with us as upstanders until justice was served. My soon-to-be fellow alums, and it's so good to be home. Thank you, Dr. Donahue. You have reached a milestone that only 8% of people in this country have reached. When you leave here today, you will be the recipient of a graduate degree or an additional credential. That will open doors that perhaps had not been available to you. So as graduates of St. Mary's College, what would it look like as you move out into your various disciplines and fields to decide that no matter where you were, and no matter whether you were in business or in education or in leadership or science or arts, that whenever you saw injustice, you would decide to do what you can to be an upstander for justice, equality, and civility toward fellow human beings. St. Francis of Assisi said, "Hope has two daughters, anger and courage. Anger at what is and what ought to be, and courage to make what ought to be come to be." You've heard my background around human trafficking. And indeed, in that courtroom 17 years ago, when I saw that 10-year-old girl about this high come in there shackled and handcuffed from having spent 3 days in juvenile detention for a situation that she neither asked for nor controlled, that I learned my anger, my true outrage. I could have been a bystander, went home, vented about it with my friends and family, posted it on Facebook. I'd have gotten some reposts, probably would have gotten a whole lot of likes. However, I wanted to make real change. And let me say, liking something on Facebook does not create a sustainable movement. It takes coalition building, identifying strategies, and forming a vision around what change would look like. I recruited 4 additional women. We formed that coalition. We educated others. We passed public policy. We raised money. And we started what was the first movement in this country to identify the trafficking of human beings could indeed happen in our own backyards. It was not easy, nor without personal sacrifice, but our courage was grounded in our belief that if even one child is exploited, that was one child too many. What is the injustice before you that you see in plain sight when you become this upstander? In today's times, unfortunately, there are many options. In our current political landscape, they use the strategy of divisiveness, seeding the beliefs that one group is greater than the other, the untruth that a group that has less resources is there because they want to be, not because of systemic barriers. I want to remind you, the motto of the United States is one that we have seen countless times on our money. E pluribus unum. Out of many, there is one. There is also a saying in the Black community, we may have come here in different ways, but we're all in the same boat now. The diversity among us is our strength. This country continues to uniquely evolve, one become many. My simple suggestion is to choose to stand up to any force that attempts to divide us by race, ethnicity, gender, faith, sexual preference, or seek to limit or eliminate rights for a targeted group. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We are caught in an inescapable network, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects the other one indirectly. I can never be all that I can be until you become all that you can be. So, to my St. Mary's posse, on this day, it is my privilege to confer to you my great hope in you, that as upstanders, you will feel anger and injustices, have the resolve to say something, and have that courage to then do something. Remember, as a member of the 8%, you're the newest inductees in a very privileged group. And so I leave with you this quote from an anonymous source. Behind you are your memories here at St. Mary's and before. Before you are all of your dreams. And look around at those in that stand who loves you. But most importantly, know that within you, you have all that you need. The class of 2017, you are indeed the ones that we have been waiting for. Congratulations.